Hello and welcome to the Improving Always podcast. We're back after a couple weeks hiatus, but we're back and we're going to be, doing episodes weekly from now on. Now that we've sorted a couple things out, we're going to hop right in. Today's topic is the mental side of the game. So obviously, I got popular originally by talking about the mental side of the game and mental training. And that's something that I still post about pretty much every day, if not multiple times a day. And I just wanted to start this off with a little bit of a story that kind of made me start taking the mental side of the game seriously. And I'm sure, Dimitri and Noblet will have their own stories, about this kind of thing, because I think all athletes do, no matter how great you are, you do have mental struggles at some point in your career. I'd be shocked if there's any athlete who didn't. So one of the big moments for me was I had always, dealt with nerves and anxiety before games, in the lead up to games, after games, going over my performance, being super critical of myself. I've always been kind of like that in pretty much all areas of my life. It's even though even when I had a good game, I'd be thinking about the things that I didn't do quite as well. And it kind of came to a head in one game where I had not played my best game. It was a cup game in England. And went to a penalty shootout. And I was like, okay, leave the 90 minutes or 120 minutes, I guess, behind. I'm going to take a penalty. I was the first one, stepped up, feeling really, really good until I put the ball down on the spot. And all of a sudden, it was like so many emotions and thoughts racing through my head. And it just overwhelmed me. I could hardly, stand back up, take steps back, walk up to the ball and shoot. And, of course I was going to miss. I was going to miss from the moment I put the ball down on the spot, because I had gotten in my head. And the day after, I was like, or, even moments after, but the day after, I woke up and I was like, I've dealt with this to varying degrees before, never dealt with something quite as extreme as that. What can I do? I was in university at the time, ended up talking to, I was doing a sports degree as well. So I ended up talking to, someone who was, had an expertise in the area of sports psychology. And we, talked about a bunch of different, stuff. I'm not saying that, you can change your whole perspective in a week. But just realizing a few things and starting to employ a couple strategies, changed my whole perspective pretty much overnight. And even though it's been a process since then, it hasn't been, 1 week and then I was good. I've had to work on this stuff, while I was playing and, afterwards. And it's not always smooth sailing. But the week after I missed a penalty and played one of the worst games I've probably ever played in my life, I had the best game I have ever played in my life. And I think it's a really important message for young players, because when I was younger, I'd have problems with confidence. And whenever I asked, how do you improve your confidence? The only answer I would ever get was just be more confident, because it seems like no one has more of an answer than that. But I think that's really, really harmful, because basically it's saying if you're not confident already, you can't get there. And I just think that is absolutely not true. Confidence is 100% something that you can build and develop and grow. And the mental side of the game is super important for a lot of athletes, and it's something that's just not talked enough for me. Talked enough about for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything that you said.
Do you have any stories about
any
yourself
stories?
being stressed?
Circle back to me. I'm sure I have a million. But give me a second to think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have any stories, but I will say that it does seem that mental doubt and all these things are something that happens in all athletes, even the best athletes. I mean, I've played in games where I've stepped on the field knowing I am the best player on the field. I knew it for a fact. And then I'll get out on the field and I'll start wondering, do the players out here think I suck? Do they think I'm terrible? It's like, I'm doing rainbows over these guys. So that's not what's happening, but my brain will still go there. And I think that the reality is one of the things you have to do as a player is remember, there's always a next play. There's always a next game. So even if I take a bad touch, even if it's a really bad touch, let's say I score an own goal of my team. Well, I got to pick myself up and play the next play, because if I don't, I could miss out on scoring a goal to make up for that own goal. And all those things. And that's something that I've always really, really just harped on is it's okay that I make mistakes. What I'm worried about more is the next play, because a point that I've made before is if, let's say we have the two best club teams in the world or whoever you guys think it is playing against each other. And if every player just like stood still and stopped after they made a mistake, all 22 players would be stopped, I think, within 25 minutes. Like, I don't even think it would take that long.
I doubt it would take that long. Yeah. It depends how big a mistake it has to be, right?
Unless maybe it's a team of 11 Dimitris versus 11 Dimitris, then the games, we're probably playing 120 minutes right there. But aside from that,
it'd be 11 Dimitris versus 11 me's. We'd play to infinity, and it would just be. Actually, maybe I would nick you because of goalkeeping, because I don't know if you goalkeep.
He was a goalkeeper way back in the day.
Way back in the day.
And then I broke your finger, and then you never played in net again.
Exactly.
Yeah, one thing that helped me a lot dealing with mistakes, because it is very easy to make one mistake and all of a sudden you're thinking about that mistake. So I played up front in the better years of my career. So as an attacking player, you miss one chance, and it's very easy to think about that chance over and over and over and over and over again. I can still remember some of the bad misses that I had in my career, even now, after, trying to move on from them. I don't, think about them as much. But obviously, it happens. Just like I think anyone in the world, no matter what they're doing, will think about mistakes that they've made years and years ago. And I think that one thing that really helped me was recognizing that. So after the penalty, for example, I missed a penalty. Was I a different player after the penalty than I was before? Was I a different player after the game than I was before? Absolutely not. I was exactly the same player. I hadn't gotten any worse. And I think a lot of players, they play in a bad game, and they start thinking that they're a bad player. No game is make or break for you. No one game, no one training session, no one play is make or break for your career. The most impressive thing about the best players in the world is their consistency. It's not the best play they've ever made. It's that they've made they've played multiple seasons and been excellent while making mistakes at the same time. So recognizing that mistakes don't change you was something that was really helpful for me. Because I feel like a lot of the time, and it helps a lot even, within a single game, because say I get the ball early on and I miss a chance early on. Then after I miss that chance, if I'm thinking, oh, I'm a bad player, I'm going to miss the next chance. I'm going to miss the chance after that. But if I'm able to say I missed a chance, doesn't mean I'm more likely to miss again. I'll get the ball. I'll play with confidence the next time I do. So that was something that was really, really helpful for me, recognizing the mistakes. only define you if you let them define you.
Yeah. Any other like tips or tricks that you use? Like, do you visualize? Did you do that before games? I know you talk a lot about it on TikTok, but as an athlete, it's something I never did. And I don't know.
What did you have?
I feel like back originally, you told me that it didn't do much way back. And that's the only time I've really thought about it. Well, I don't know. I feel like now you've said that it helps a lot. Obviously everything's depending on the player.
Yeah. I think what we had talked about at that point was, I think Tiger Woods, if I'm not mistaken, came out with a book.
That's exactly what it was.
And he said that he never used visualization, that it didn't work for him. It didn't help him at all. Now, the thing about mental training is there are multiple different strategies that you can use, and not all of them will benefit every player. I've talked about a bunch of different strategies. I can guarantee that one of them will work for any person. I've never met an athlete where I gave them 10 different strategies and none of them helped at all. Some don't like visualization. Some don't like self-talk because they think it's like like I'm a good player. They think it's like too kind of cheesy or something. Some people don't like.
It should be cocky, like Zlatan.
Yeah, true.
It should be arrogant. You're so good because.
Yeah. It's highly. What I found is it's highly individualized. So I don't love visualization that much for me personally. What I think self-talk for me helps a ton. So, telling myself that I will be the best player on a field, telling myself that I'm, an incredible player, watching my own highlights with, while telling myself that helps a lot. Certain things help a lot less. Obviously watching my own highlights, is a kind of a form of visualization, but, I use it more as self-talk than anything else, more to like hype me up than to actually imagine that I'm playing better. So let's start. So I have a couple different areas kind of to go to and different strategies to help with different things. So let's start by just talking a little bit about how sport is a stressful environment and kind of like why our experiences with that. And then we'll move on to a couple different ones. So I've played for multiple different teams. We've all played at a decently high level at different times. And I'm sure felt the pressure. So let's talk about that, and then I'll talk about how I kind of figured out dealing with that. So yeah, talk about how much pressure you felt at different times in your career.
I mean, it definitely is a lot of pressure. I mean, especially as you start getting to higher and higher levels. It's not just you, it's not just the team, it's not just the coach, it's not just the organization of your team, but like you have fans coming through, you have people getting paid on your team, you're maybe getting paid, people Parents. Are doing this, your teammates are doing this as a job, they're going to demand everything from you, so it does get stressful, and especially if you're training every day or every night, and especially maybe you have school to go to, maybe you have like a job to do, it's just a lot. And if you're spreading yourself thin or getting overwhelmed, it's going to show,
Yeah. And another thing, once you get into the higher levels, be it even college soccer, yet professional levels, there's a lot more expected out of you as a player, and that can really quickly get to you. And there's a quote from my pro indoor coach that reminds me, and he was talking about back when he played in the old school MISL for a team called the Detroit Rockers. And he says his coach came up to him and asked him how many goals or assists he had that game. And he told him 0. And his coach responded, "Why the F am I paying you?" And that type of pressure, I mean, at that level, I mean, you're expected to produce. You step on the field, you're expected to score a goal or get an assist. And even though he very likely played very well in defensive aspects of the game, passing, dribbling, his coach expected him to score. And that's something that, I mean, that quote stood out to me as well, because even though I think my coach did notice other aspects of the game, when he told that story, he didn't say that I'm different than that coach. So,
Yeah.
but so like, I did think that whenever I stepped on the field, it's like, well, I've got to produce to keep my spot on the team. And if I don't produce, well, that's not good enough. And that can really get to you.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of pro indoor, Denver Avalanche, was it? I forget. What is it? Denver Avalanche. Yes. 1980, 81. That's Sky's dad. And that's the picture of them.
As far as the rockers go, are these people who are rocking to rock music, or am I envisioning
rocking chair?
Of rocking chairs? Yeah,
that's what I thought. I think it was because of Motown, Detroit and Motown music.
Okay.
So they're
rocking. It's not rocking chairs.
Yeah,
that's what I was hoping for.
I think rocking chairs would be better.
The team doesn't have a bench; everyone's just on rocking chairs on the sidelines.
Well, yeah, they're probably all in rocking chairs now because they're all old. True. This was like, and the league ended in the early 90s, that version of the MISL at least. Or that team.
I like a good rocking chair, and I'm only 27. I'm just throwing that out there.
I enjoy one.
Yeah.
But no, it's all, it boils down to results a lot of the time, you know? Like you were saying, goals, assists, clean sheets. You know, if you're not producing that, then yeah, why would you have a starting spot?
Yeah, like even high school team. I mean, to be fair, even youth teams in a lot of places, especially in the US, put results like super high on the list of priorities when it really shouldn't be. But you start getting to high school, you start really feeling that pressure to perform, to have results. And I think despite that, you need to kind of not get caught up in playing for goals, playing for assists, playing for, this or that. Even at a very, very high level, I found that, focusing on the end result when it's something you can't control is just not going to help you. You need to, take a step back and focus on things that you can control. So you can control to some degree your performance, but you can't control if you get chances to score, and you can't, you're not going to score every chance you get. So one thing I like to tell players is I get a ton of messages from players who are attacking players, and they're like, "Coach, I haven't scored a goal in like 10 games and I'm driving myself crazy." And the first question I ask is, are you playing badly? And usually they say, I don't think I'm playing any different than I was when I was scoring a lot. I had a season after I had a really, really good season 1 year when I was playing in England, scored 20 plus goals, was Players Player of the Year, top scorer. And then the next year, in the fall, because I only played the fall season that year because I broke my foot and tore some ligaments in my foot. But I played 20 games. I only scored 4 goals. But goals plus assists, I actually had a better ratio than I had the previous year. If you factor goals plus assists. And I think, like, based on how I felt playing, and how I felt within the team, I thought I was a better player that fall season than I had been the year before. Even though I was playing up front and I had only scored 4 goals in 20 games. And it took me a while to kind of realize that. and be like, you know what, I am helping the team, maybe even more than I was last year. You can control your own performance. You can't always control, whether the team wins and loses. That's not up to you. There's 22 players on the field. They're all trying to help their team win. All you can do is help your team win. All you can do is try to play well. You can't guarantee that you'll score goals or assist at the end of the day. So focus on things you can control, not on things that you can't control.
And yeah, that comes to another point is, let's say you're a striker, and we all know strikers are judged by their goal scoring abilities, whether they should be judged for more than that or not. However, as a player, always think about the things that you're doing well, even if it is not finishing. And if I'm doing really good hold-up play and I'm bringing my midfielders into the play, maybe the fact that I'm not scoring goals is not as important because I'm helping bring other players into the play that they can create opportunities. Maybe I'm pressuring really well up front and I'm causing the other team to make mistakes. Maybe my runs are so good that I'm drawing defenders away from the other players that are getting their opportunities to score. And that actually is a point. One of the last games I played in Pro Indoor, I had no statistics of note, maybe some tackles, but no goals, no assist. But one goal, I made the run that took the defender with me and made my teammate wide open for an easy goal. And if I don't make that run, he doesn't score. Now, the average person in the stands doesn't notice that. I'm not even sure if my coach noticed that. He should have.
A good coach would.
Yeah. He was a good coach, so he probably did. But things like that matter, and you'll see that. And you'll see small stretches with even the best players in the world, like Ronaldo or Messi. It's like, oh, you're playing against Lionel Messi. We have to focus on him. Yeah. So other players will get into the game and other players will be open to score opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as long as the team is being successful and you're playing your part in that, obviously if your team is scoring no goals ever and you're playing up front and you are getting the ball, maybe things need to change a little bit and you're missing tons and tons of chances. Then we can talk about that and how to fix that. But just telling me that you haven't scored, but I mean, you're playing up front and your team is scoring 3, 4, 5, depending on the level, goals every game. You're probably doing something to help that. You're probably not just standing there because your team probably wouldn't be successful if you were.
A good current example that some of our listeners might be aware of is Roberto Firmino for Liverpool.
That's what I was going to say.
Last season, he was heavily criticized for not scoring goals, but there's a reason Jurgen Klopp always kept confidence in him. He kept creating opportunities, creating goals, and he's kind of redefined some of the center forward position for Liverpool in recent years.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing that I wanted to talk about, bringing it back to, how much pressure is in playing sport at a high level. You want that pressure. You want to be playing in front of, at younger levels, at youth games and stuff, you're playing in front of parents and that's it. And then you get to high school and still probably mostly just parents. And then you get to college and you're playing against, in front of more people, or you play professionally, you're playing against, in front of fans and, in big stadiums and stuff. You want that. I know that yes, of course there's added pressure that comes with that, but it's not pressure that you want to run away from. That pressure is there and you've been working, maybe for 10, 20, years, decades to get to that level where you can play with pressure. So don't act like, it's something that is weighing on you. It is a privilege to play for a team in a league where people care about what you're doing, where, random people care about how you play. That's a privilege. And yes, this pressure that comes with that, but that's what you want. And a lot of players just never take the time to just stop for a second and realize, you know what, I'm playing in front of 1,000 people, or, you know, even more than that. But that's what I want. That's why I've been trying to, you know, go pro. And all of a sudden they get there and they're like, I don't want this anymore. You do. Just take a minute and breathe and realize that, you know, it's a privilege to be in that situation. What's the most people you guys have ever played in front of, do you think?
I don't know, the promotion to Segunda B. I guess didn't even play. That was just my team. I was just there. I'm trying to think. Probably one of the games for like the Periferia in Greece, like the region team when we played the final.
True. Yeah.
Echo Stadium. There were a lot of people there.
How many do you think? A couple thousand, or?
Yeah, probably something like that.
Unfortunately, pro indoor crowds are quite small, so
yeah,
a couple thousand is probably the most. Our home games, we actually averaged very low attendance, so so it's like 500, 600 people per game. But I mean, it's still a crowd, and there's still people.
That's a crowd. That's a crowd.
We do have to American soccer is kind of funky in that way. I remember after playing professional soccer, I was in Atlanta, and there was the NASL team, which was the second division of the MLS at the time, Atlanta Silverbacks. And then there was Georgia State University, and Georgia State University would have literally double the fans that the professional team did.
Yeah.
But that's the way American sports work. I mean, even college football has more fans than NFL games. It's just we like our amateur sports here, I guess.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm trying to think. Probably with Bologna-Kos, maybe in Rama, or maybe our promotion. Yeah, probably, because that was like
that had a bunch of people.
That was a fiesta afterwards. Yeah. That was like the whole, because I remember everyone on the pitch afterwards, and it was pretty packed. So that was probably a decent crowd. You know, also in England when I played for obviously I was playing, you know, non-league there. But then also for the university team, and when I played varsity against Kiel, that was like
there were a lot of people there.
Both stands.
True.
That was, and like fireworks. That was pretty crazy.
That was wild. I just remember eating a nice sausage as I watched the game.
Yeah,
it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked a little bit about that, and we've talked a little bit about how you know, single mistakes don't mean that much. I want to move on to nerves. Lots of players experience nerves, you know, before games. And it's something that I think there's this huge misconception about. So I told this story recently on Instagram, but I've actually thrown up before games sometimes because I was so nervous, you know, to go and play with them. And this is an issue I had, you know, a decent amount actually. And I would often throw up, get out on the field, and feel completely fine and play very, very well. Experiencing nerves, even extreme nerves before games, does not mean that you will play badly. One story that I found out recently was, do either of you know who Bill Russell is?
Basketball player?
No. Yeah. He used to throw up before games, and he won more NBA titles than anybody else, I believe. 11 titles.
Yeah, he was on that Celtics team that just swept everybody. Yeah,
and he was one of the big. I think he won like 4 or 5 MVPs. MVPs.
He shut down Wilt Chamberlain, which was not an easy task.
Yeah, true. So I think a lot of people think that, you know, like as you go to higher and higher levels, players are always, you know, more calm before games. They never have nerves. They don't have thoughts of, you know, self-doubt and all of this. I think that if you look at some of the best athletes in the world, they definitely have nerves before games. They just realize that nerves don't mean I'm going to play worse. I have nerves. Of course I do, because I'm doing something I care about. Really, it's just excitement. I think just realizing that nerves aren't necessarily a bad thing. And that actually, if you look at the evidence, experiencing some level of nerves before games helps you play better. I think realizing that has been super helpful to some athletes that I've talked about. And most of them are like, what? Are you kidding me? Of course, nerves are going to make me play worse. And it really doesn't work like that.
And on the point, the people thinking that higher level athletes don't get nervous, I would actually argue that in some ways, higher level athletes get more nervous. Like the games that you don't get nervous on, I remember playing as like really a little kid before you got into true competitive club soccer or high school soccer. Exactly. Those were the days you just stepped out on the field and like you either were having fun or you were waiting for your juice packet after the game, one of the two. And those are the only times in my life that like there's no nerves. Like, and now, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I have nerves stepping out to play pickup sometimes. I mean, am I really as good as I think I am? Am I really going to perform? Do the players out there think I'm good? Do they think I suck? And that always is in the back of my head, no matter how confident I am, no matter how many goals I score, and no matter how well I play. And the best thing I can think to do is back to what we said earlier, think of things I am doing well that or I'm clearly doing well and just play. And remember that I'm there by my own choice and because I love the sport.
Yeah, definitely. D, any experiences with nerves before games? Or were you a lot more calm and collected than me?
No. I mean, definitely you feel nerves. Then again, at the end of the day, like Noblet said, you're there to have fun, no matter what level you're at, you're there because you really enjoy the game. So I think you just got to remember that. Definitely the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a recurring theme that I'm going to do every single week, how I think it's fun and fun is the most important thing. But it really is. I mean, a lot of people think it's corny. It's like, oh, if your training's fun, you're not training hard. It's like, no, the only reason I'm here is I think this is fun. Yeah. If I didn't think it was fun, I would do something else.
Yeah, 100%.
That's why I like for you and me.
I think that like it's so important because I work with a lot of very young players, and it's so important to start with enjoyment, because if you start with anything else, even like start with like development and make things like less fun, like obviously I've talked about how you lose players if you do that, but at the same time, like if you're working with an 18-year-old and when you were working with them when they were 5 or 6, you weren't stressing, enjoyment, then they won't have that to fall back on. They might be thinking like, I've played this sport all my life, but have I ever enjoyed it? And they start thinking like, maybe not. Like, and if you can't, go back to, I'm here because I love it, I think that just creates so much more stress, because then really, why are you there? You probably haven't even gotten to that level, but it's nothing to fall back on. Kind of, you got to start with the foundation of fun.
I think we also see this on TikTok with the people living the grind, the whole grind mentality. And the whole point of the grind is that you're in the grinder. It's not fun. You're in the grind. And like, it's not saying that you don't have to work hard, because I mean, hard work is the one variable you can truly control, and every other variable is less controllable. However, like, you need to loosen up, have some fun, and realize why you're doing this. It's not to be in the grind. It's because you're enjoying what you're doing. And my guess is a lot of these I live on the grind people, whether it's for soccer, sports, or whatever thing they're doing, my guess is their grind, one, it's either a show for their TikTok, which in many cases it is a show and it's not real. But the ones that it is real, it might actually hamper their performance because they have to signal that they're on the grind. Yeah. And that will create more nerves, because if they're grinding, why aren't they performing the best at all times? When the other guy's out there having fun, and he's obviously not on the grind because he's having fun. But it
Yeah,
actually works the
rise and
opposite
grind, baby.
sometimes.
Yeah, I mean the best, like Noblet said earlier, the best games that you've played are probably the games that you've enjoyed. You know, you've been out there and you've been like every time you get the ball, you're like, you know, you're thinking about what you're good. You're like every time you get the ball, you feel like you're on top of the world. Like anything you try will work, and you're enjoying yourself, and you know everything's working out. And even when you make a
clicking
mistake,
with your teammates.
yeah, and everything. Even when you make a mistake, you move on from it super quickly. You know, you're in that kind of flow state, which is I guess is another good transition because people talk
Mamba
about
mentality.
Yeah, people talk about being like kind of in the flow. I actually don't think that getting in the flow is super difficult. I think the hard part is staying in that state. So this is I've actually recently I've been working with athletes in some different sports, and I think that in other sports it can be even harder. There aren't that many stoppages in a sport like soccer. In a sport like I don't know what other sports don't have a ton of stuff. Maybe like hockey,
Rugby.
Rugby. Yeah,
Australian rules football as well.
chess.
Chess doesn't stop, you know. Once the timer starts, you're going.
But like
Can I make just a funny point about chess,
go for
it? Chess actually might be one of the most stressing sports in, well, I don't know if we want to call it a sport or not. But
That's believable.
Stressing because apparently like professional chess players, they lose pounds and pounds of body weight just by sweating during the chess game because it is so mentally taxing. And it's actually quite absurd. I remember reading some like article about it and it's like, no, this is crap. My skepticism radar went out the roof. But then like I looked more into it and it's like, yeah, they actually probably do sweat 5-10 pounds in an hour or something like that. And it's like,
and people try to say it's not a sport. Get out of here. You ain't burning those calories playing badminton. Although you probably are. Badminton's wild. But you know what I mean. You ain't burning those playing golf.
Yeah,
you ain't losing that much weight.
I think the distinction between like sport and like competition is like pretty meaningless. Like, I mean, there are sports that you don't move like that much, and like it's more about like decision making and stuff. I think probably one of the reasons that chess is so stressful is that there is no luck involved. It's all you. You control everything. You don't control where your opponent can move, obviously, but you control every move you make. And you know, there's thousands of moves you can make, I assume, right?
Probably.
There's 16
I'm
pieces.
not good at checkers,
you can move.
So you're not going to ask me much about chess.
Every piece in multiple
we just
ways.
play tic-tac-toe with Noblet.
Yeah.
We keep it to that.
But like, it's all.
Have
it's
you seen
all
the tic-tac-toe with soccer? Where you kick the soccer ball against the tic-tac-toe board? I'm sure I'd run the court. I'm sure I'd run the court against both of you. So just throwing it out there.
We'll set it up sometime. Yeah, but like, you know, it's all on you. But going back to, you know, why I brought up other sports is, you know, obviously penalties in soccer can be like very stressful, and it's almost like every play in golf is like a set piece in soccer. Like you stop, you have maybe minutes, all right, in between each of your hits. Like that pressure builds. In soccer, you're usually playing, it's harder for that pressure to build because pressure builds more when you're stopped, when you're not doing anything, because you can't distract yourself from the pressure.
Yeah, you do a lot more in soccer. You know, you make one mistake, 5 seconds later, you have another opportunity.
Ball back. Yeah, exactly.
You know, in golf, you do one bad hit.
The perfect example of what Christo is talking about, though, is it's actually an extremely common strategy in both American football and basketball. Say there's an important field goal. Well, the other team calls a timeout.
Yeah.
That way they make the field goal taker think about the field goal longer. And that doesn't exist in soccer. If I make a mistake in soccer, even if it is missing a penalty kick, unless the ball goes out of bounds or whatever, and even if it does, the ball's normally back in play in the next minute
Yeah.
at most. I mean, it's not really that long of a. I mean, the only similar thing with that in soccer right now is VAR, and unfortunately, I never played a high enough level, and recently enough to have VAR as a problem.
Actually,
I mean, I think.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think like in close games where the game is coming to an end, you're like your team's kicking the ball out of bounds. You're not just doing that to waste time. You're getting the other team out of their rhythm and out of their flow. So it's harder for them to like counter on you. You know, I think we did that. We did that all the time here in Spain, and teams, because we finished top of the league that year. But the lower teams that we would lose to, they would do that to us. You know, if for 90 minutes they don't let you get in the groove, it's going to be a tough game, you know, because they want to play like that. They don't want you to have the ball. They don't want you to take your time, circulate, get in your rhythm. They're just going to kick it out and counter.
Yeah, I think
so. I think you do have that in soccer.
I would just say, like, obviously you have it. It's just to a lower degree, because obviously, you know, I know nothing about golf, but like, you know, so like baseball, if you're like stepping up, you're gonna take a couple swings, you know, and then you don't do that. You know, you go back and you wait. So, you know, that pressure builds. And what if you messed up? What if you struck out and then you have to go wait for your next turn? And, you know, the whole time you're thinking and the pressure's building. And at the same time, it's harder to, you know, even if you, you know, you do really, really well, you hit a home run or something, then like, you're like feeling great, but then you go sit and you don't do anything for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
That momentum kind of stops. I had a coach in Greece when I was playing for the IL Academy, who got like the thing that annoyed him more than anything else was referees who called everything. So like the tiniest things would be fouls. The tiniest things where he could have like let us play on would be, you know, called back, or let the other team play on would be called fouls. And he would, I forget what he called it, but you know, that he would get so annoyed at that when there'd be a foul, like every minute or every 30 seconds or whatever, the ball would go out of play. And I remember him like, you know, going insane because he just wanted us to play and get into the game and get in that kind of flow state.
Yeah. And to the point that Christo is making, I think sports to where you end up being the individual in the spotlight, the only person in the spotlight. And this is actually why penalty kicks in soccer are the one thing that's just extremely nerve-wracking. But the example I have actually is in another sport that I've competed in, powerlifting.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing on earth that has racked my nerves quite like unracking a heavy 1-rep max squat attempt while everyone in the room's eyes are on you. I'm having to pay attention to a judge giving me commands on how I do the lift, and I'll unrack and my whole body is shaking. I feel myself shaking underneath the weight because of nerves. It's not because the weight's heavy. Normally I actually hit heavier lifts in training. And yeah, it's really, really hard. And you have to really, really kind of zone in and concentrate and don't stare at anyone's faces.
Yeah.
Because if you do, you'll lose your shit.
Yeah. I had
it can be tough when I'm there doing triple the weight just for my warm up next to you too, you know?
Yeah, actually like, that's interesting. Cause like, I know a lot of people are like, you know, you should pick one sport and play that sport exclusively. And I kind of used to be like that. And obviously if you're taking, you know, soccer very, very seriously, needs to be a priority. You need to be training pretty much daily. But at the same time, I think that a great form of stress relief is playing different sports. So I know a lot of really great athletes have like they play golf as well. And obviously, if you're a certain Welsh player or Argentinian, you can take that to the extreme, and it's not a good thing. But if you're, you know, something that I used to do to, you know, relieve my stress kind of is on my days off, forget about soccer for a minute, go out and shoot some hoops, even though I'm terrible at basketball, absolutely horrendous. It was just fun. And I'd do it and I'd be nice and relaxed and I'd be, missing every shot, but I'd be laughing about it. And, cause I don't expect myself to be good at basketball. I can just kind of chill.
Yeah. And I would say this just goes for hobbies across the board. And I would go as far as say, you have to have some hobby outside of soccer. And it needs to be a hobby that you don't necessarily have to take it super, super serious, but you have to actually love doing it. And a lot of players play music. I mean, there are people who play an instrument or they do something else like this, and that can be a good stress relief. There are examples like I actually do multiple other sports like recreationally for fun. Like I have a kickboxing heavy bag in my basement as well. And I love doing that to get in a little extra cardio and just stress relief. And it's fun.
Nothing like punching something or kicking something.
I imagine all day little things are just annoying Noblet, and it's building up. He's building up, and he goes home. He just throws his jacket and goes downstairs, just beats up this poor bag.
Yeah, and I mean, a heavy bag's actually like literally one of the best stress reliefs because whatever you wanted to punch that day, you get to punch. Just it's imaginary, and you're punching it back. But the other thing is like I think there's even some argument for this, even from a athletic perspective, just bettering yourself as an athlete, because as much as soccer has to be the priority, if soccer is your goal and that's what you're playing either competitively or professionally, having another form of athletic endeavor will allow you to get some training in that will have indirect carryover to your sport, but it will also train your muscles through different movements, which if you're only playing soccer, certain muscles will get more wear and tear and won't be recovering as well, to where when I do kickboxing, well, my muscles are working in a very different way. So they're not wearing and tearing in the same way. So I actually can get a good workout in and not hurt my recovery as bad as necessarily another soccer session during that day.
Yeah. And like, this is something I was super skeptical of for a long time. And I was, I would be like, all I play is soccer pretty much. I don't think that's like a bad thing. And it's not like you need to be playing a lot if you want to play at a high level. But playing one sport is associated with higher risk of injury, which is why it's very important that, if you're a one sport athlete, it's even more important that you're resistance training. And also, it's good to mix it up a little bit and do something like that on the side. Zlatan does Taekwondo or, whatever different athletes do.
Kicking his teammates in the head.
Yeah, true. And, it'll help you be a better player. You don't have to take it super seriously, but I think, doing something else competitively and, playing another sport just a bit, once a week or every other week or something, it can help for sure.
Go play some ping pong. Go play some badminton, Go ice skating.
Yeah,
you actually see professional teams get really into ping pong. Like they'll have ping pong tournaments going on and all that stuff. And yeah, that's fine. There's nothing
we had
wrong
ping
with
pong
that
tournament at Hardwick. We had a ping pong tournament, and we did Zumba too. We did like Zumba classes like every week. This is crazy.
We used to play we had to be at like the stadium like an hour and a half before the session even started. I said we had this little trampoline and we'd play our own little version of like spike ball, but you had to kick the ball. And we got so into that. Like people were getting injured right and left from this game, and the coach had to ban it because he was like, dude, I'd let you play, but you all get too intense about this. You're not allowed to play anymore. Like,
I had a question I wanted to ask both of you, because something that comes up a lot when I talk about mental training and dealing with nerves and all of this stuff is how you want to be clutch, like clutch players, clutch athletes. So who do you think All right. And then I'll tell you why you're wrong. Who do you think is the most clutch athlete of all time?
Not Busquets.
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Okay. D, anything?
Athlete? Any athlete?
Any athlete?
He just said athlete. He didn't say soccer.
Doesn't
Yeah,
have,
he
no,
didn't
no,
say
no.
soccer.
Because I would have to say me for soccer. I'm going to give Jordan the
Yeah,
credit
I'd
for
have
that.
to say myself as well. Most clutch athlete of all times. I don't know. Faker, League of Legends.
There we go. All right. And then I wanted to ask you, what does clutch mean to you?
See, now this is where it's tricky because the way you made it sound, I was being like consistent, but I feel like if you're clutch, at least personally to me, it means you come in at the perfect moment always and like you save the day, you know? That's what comes in to me.
Yeah, and that's actually why I brought up Jordan, because there's so many famous game-winning shots. But exactly what Christo is going to tell me is like when he missed the three-pointer against the Pacers and didn't make the finals.
I'm not
This
going
is
to tell
gonna be
you
like
that.
clutch athlete. I just meant somebody who can drive a stick car. That's all I wanted to
All right.
know.
So I
Just a
wanted to
clutch
do
driver.
I wanted to do something very, very special and
Lewis Hamilton.
and read the intro to a chapter from
Of
my
Christo's
book
own book.
called Become Clutch. Now, chapter 4.
Who's it
Become,
dedicated to?
not you.
Bear.
Probably Sky. We'll see. You'll get a mention, don't worry. I'll include a story about you.
And the IAW podcast.
Yeah, true. Okay, so and I'm very happy that you said Michael Jordan. I was hoping someone would. All right, chapter 4, Become Clutch. We don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Archilokos. Who is the most clutch athlete of all time? There are many answers you could give to this question. Cristiano Ronaldo, Tom Brady, Derek Jeter, Tiger Woods, Kobe Bryant. I could go on and on. One name does seem to top most lists, though. Michael Jordan. And yet I am here to tell you that he was not clutch, that none of them were, or at least that clutch does not mean what you think it does. So how do most people use clutch? When most people say clutch, they mean someone who always shows up in the big moments, that they rise to the occasion, that they perform better than ever in the most high pressure environments. And that is just not what any of these athletes did. They did not turn it on when it mattered. They just never turned it off. What was Michael Jordan's all-time shooting percentage? 49.7%. Damn. What was his all-time shooting percentage in the playoffs? 48.7%. Still, damn. How about when taking game-winning shots? He went 9 of 18, 50%. Damn. And yet these numbers are all pretty much the same. Michael Jordan made about as many of his game-winning shots as you would expect him to if you watched him play in the regular season or in the playoffs. By most people's definition of clutch, Michael Jordan was not clutch. What was he? He was consistent. If I had been lucky enough to watch Michael Jordan train with the Bulls, I am confident that I would have watched him put away about 50% of his shots. If I had been even luckier to watch him train alone, I am sure I would have seen him put away slightly more if the shots were unopposed. And the same if he had a trainer or teammate try to get in his way. Most people think that the greatest athletes show up when it matters, but that is not true. The greatest athletes show up all the time. Every time they set foot on the court or the field, they are ready to perform. I'm not saying they will not have bad games, that they will not have bad training sessions, but the thing that truly sets them apart is their consistency. Thoughts?
So basically, I was correct.
Basically, yeah.
I mean, I have to
Great
agree with
moment.
that as well, because I mean the reality is we're all humans. Nobody steps up and hits the game winner every single time, and
Mhm.
the best person hitting game winning shots is basically just going to be your best shooter in your practice games, your regular season games. The guy who hits the shot in the middle of the game with no buzzer to beat is probably going to be the best guy to hit the shot at the end of the game when you have to score and
Yeah.
there is a buzzer to beat. I mean, the only real difference is pressure, and the most consistent players. I mean, this is something that, like, I also come back to. When you get better at a sport, you should get more confident at it, and this will help with your nerves. And the best players in the world, and this is also why a lot of your best players, like Cristiano Ronaldo and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, are probably my two best examples of this. People think of them as cocky. People think of them as arrogant, and they are, but they're arrogant because they're good and they know they're good. And this actually plays into their how to mentally approach the game. If Ibrahimovic steps on the field and he quits referring to himself as Zlatan in third person, as the lion, and all these things, that's the day we know that Ibrahimovic no longer has it. Because as
Yeah.
long as he is Zlatan and he is the lion and doesn't deal with sheep and all that stuff, he's still going to go out into Serie A and score 15, 20 goals a season, even when he's 60 years old. I mean, that's just how it works.
Yeah. I think like the big thing for me is like a lot of people think that like great athletes, when the pressure's on, they play better. But actually, what usually happens is they play the same and everyone else plays worse. Pressure affects most people. Most people play a lot better in training than they do in games. Most people play a lot better at pickup than they do in official games. Most people let the pressure get to them. What sets the greatest athletes apart isn't that they rise to the occasion. It's that they're able to maintain the same level, whatever they're doing, because they don't let the pressure get to them. It was like actually crazy to me looking at those statistics of, Michael Jordan shooting percentage. And they were all like, it was like so consistent. I was like, that's what clutch is, because, it doesn't matter if he's in training. Well, I mean, I would assume that it's fairly similar in training, but it doesn't matter if it's a regular season game or a playoff game, or if he's shooting the winning shot. You know what you'll get if you pass the ball to Michael Jordan, because he's, 50% chance he's going to make that shot. Obviously, it'll be a little bit different depending on the kind of shot and all of that. But, every time he gets the ball, you know what you're getting, which is the big, like, Cristiano Ronaldo, you can count on him to score, but he doesn't just score in the knockout rounds of the Champions League. He scored a hat trick against, it was Atletico Madrid, right, to turn around that tie. But how many hat tricks has he scored against, random teams that no one's ever heard of, or that no one's ever heard of, that like,
small teams,
probably. Yeah. Small teams
that aren't, I mean, how many times has he been in a game where they're winning 5-0 and he nicks one of the goals?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the best players don't just step up in the big games. They get their goals in when they're playing minnows. And
yeah,
I would even say that this is true for certain more what I would consider role players, not what we consider clutch. There are guys who are less talented that just understand how to be consistent. They have mentally got themselves. And then there are super talented players that basically crap themselves when they step on the pitch in real games. There was a player on my pro indoor team who, in training, I remember the coach telling us he's the best player on the team in training. He would do step overs, beat our starting players 1v1 like it was nothing. And he never got picked in the games after a while, which I think was not the correct decision. But it was because every time he stepped on the field in the real game, he would just lose possession. He would miss his mark on defense and all this stuff. And it was because mentally he just didn't step up to the challenge. And when it mattered, he couldn't be consistent. And there were other guys on the team who were not nearly as talented as him, but they produced. They managed to play consistently well, and they would actually perform better in the game, even if they weren't as talented.
Yeah. I mean, there's training players and there's game players. But one thing that I think, I had a coach who would always ask us, like, are you a weekday player or are you a weekend player? Because weekend is like, that's when most of the games happen. So, are you going to show up for me just during the week, or are you going to show up for me on the weekend? And I actually kind of disagree with that, because I think that what I just said, good players show up all the time. It's not just about showing up on the weekend. It's not just about showing up at the game. So kind of a switch of perspective for a lot of players. If you're training well and you're underperforming in games, don't look at it as, oh no, I have this huge problem that I'm underperforming in games. No, you've taken the first step to performing in games by performing in training. Now you just need to figure out how to take the second. And that's something that, kind of help me realize, you keep taking training seriously, and it's not just about games. If you train well, if you train how you want to play, and you figure out dealing with pressure by, employing some of the strategies that we talked about, and then I talk about on, TikTok and Instagram and all of that, you will figure it out, and you will be the same player in training that you are in games. And that's what you want. You don't need to be better. You just need to be as good. You'll be ahead of 99% of players, because 99% of players play better at training.
And
in my humble opinion,
I would say a lot of this, really, you just have to remember. I mean, the story you have about playing with your brother and your little pickup games and your coach didn't watch. I mean, this is the perfect example. It's like, what about a game is different than practice? Well, in practice, you're playing and you're not under as much pressure. That's the only difference. So when you step on the field in a real game, you have to tell yourself, it's like, this is still just soccer. This is what I love to do. This is why I'm here. The fact that there are people in the stands that will be upset if we lose, or might even boo me if I have a bad performance, which fans should not boo their own team's players, by the way. But the reality is that you have to just kind of try to get into a mental state to where he's like, yeah, this isn't actually that different from how I play in training. I mean, the fact that the players across the field I don't know and I don't see on a regular basis is not the point. The point is, it's still soccer. If you met those guys, they'd still just be guys like on your team, and you're there because you love the sport and you have fun playing the sport. I mean, that's what you do.
Yep, definitely. Yep. All right. I think we'll wrap this episode up. Obviously, tons more to talk about. So, we'll do another resistance training episode at some point. We'll do another mental training episode at some point. Next week, we're going to talk about recovery, which will be a nice controversial topic. I'm sure there'll be some good. Good.
I get to rip on all this. I get to rip on everyone's favorite recovery techniques that don't work.
Yeah, exactly. Which
and
is
that
basically
episode will be sponsored by foam rollers. Get one for every day and use it 24 hours a day.
Foam rolling and Chinese traditional cupping medicine.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And acupuncture.
Yeah. All of those. I have some good stories about that stuff too. So before we wrap it up, a couple quick shout outs. Obviously, I'll put links to Dimitri's social media and Noblet's social media in the description, and my own, of course. I will release the episode 2 days early on Patreon. So if you want to get it early, if you just can't wait to listen to this exciting, you're already listening to it, but for future episodes, if you want to sub to me on Patreon, you can do that. I also dropped some merch. So, people like Noblet who are too poor to afford shirts, can get some. So yeah, I'm wearing it right now. Improving always. Couple shirts. If you go to the link in my bio, want to support the podcast, I'll make sure, everyone on the podcast gets one. And we'll figure that stuff out. I was supposed to wear the tie-dye one. Someone told me to wear the tie-dye one, but that's okay. Next week.
One last thing before we end off there. Go save the polar bears. And going with our theme, less than 2% of polar bear hunts are successful, and they keep going. So they don't get stressed.
They have
by
a
only
lot more
2%
fat storages
success.
than humans, though.
Success rate. You can keep going. You can keep grinding.
Yeah, it's not a don't
Be a polar
let
bear.
don't let your failed hunts define you. It's if you keep
Exactly.
going, you're not a failure until you give up. Good place to end off. And see you next week.
Peace.
Adios.